The sharp crack of Madison's palm against my jaw used to be my daily morning bell. She called it a pathetic reality check. I called it an inescapable hell. But when I woke up breathing a second life, I knew her vanity would be her perfect, agonizing death sentence. The memory of my death wasn't a fading dream. It was a visceral, suffocating reality etched into my very cells. I remembered the freezing bathroom tiles of my dorm room at Boston University. I remembered the violent, erratic hammering of my heart against my ribs, a trapped bird battering itself to death. I remembered the blood bubbling past my lips as my internal organs, cooked from the inside out by an unregulated, hypermetabolic slimming protocol, finally shut down. I had died a size 0. My collarbones sharp enough to cut glass, entirely alone, clutching a plastic bottle of pills ordered from a shadowy Russian fitness forum. And I had done it all because of Madison Sinclair. When my eyes snapped open, I didn't see the sterile white ceiling of a hospital or the lid of a coffin. I saw the familiar glow-in-the-dark stars stuck to my childhood bedroom ceiling in Westchester County. I bolted upright, my lungs aggressively pulling in the crisp autumn air. My hands flew to my chest, feeling the steady, rhythmic thump of a healthy heart. I threw off my heavy duvet and stumbled to the full-length mirror behind my closet door. The girl staring back at me was soft, round, and carrying 30 extra pounds of adolescent misery. My cheeks were flushed, my arms were thick, and I was unquestionably, beautifully alive. I grabbed my iPhone from the nightstand. The 14th of September, 2018. A breathless laugh escaped my lips, morphing into a sob, and then into a low, chilling chuckle. I was 18 again. It was the beginning of my senior year at St. Jude's Preparatory School. It was the year Madison's relentless, sadistic bullying drove me to develop the eating disorder that eventually led me to the darkest corners of the internet for a miracle cure. Fate had hit the reset button. I was given a second chance, but I had no intention of using it to forgive, forget, or heal. I was going to use it to orchestrate a masterpiece of retribution. The first test came exactly at 8:15 a.m. in the girls' locker room. The scent of aerosol deodorant and overly sweet vanilla body mist hung heavy in the air. I stood by my dented metal locker, clutching my gym uniform, waiting. Right on schedule, the heavy double doors swung open. Madison Sinclair walked in like she owned the oxygen in the room. She was practically translucent in her perfection. Long, platinum blonde hair, icy blue eyes, and a figure so naturally slender, it made the rest of us feel structurally unsound. Flanking her were her two loyal sycophants, Harper Dubois and Bethany Lewis. Madison spotted me instantly. The cruel smirk that danced on her lips was a ghost I had seen in my nightmares for years. In my past life, this was the moment my stomach would drop to my shoes. I would shrink into myself, praying to become invisible. Not today. I stood tall, my spine straight, and looked her dead in the eye. Well, well, if it isn't the St. Jude's resident blimp, Madison sneered, her voice echoing loudly enough for the entire locker room to fall dead silent. Girls paused with their shirts halfway over their heads. She closed the distance between us, the scent of her signature Baccarat Rouge 540 perfume turning my stomach. She stopped mere inches from my face. In my past life, she justified what came next as a motivational tool. She claimed she was trying to slap the fat off me, a sick joke she frequently recounted on her Instagram live to her 400,000 followers. Her right hand shot out. Crack. The sting bloomed across my left cheek, instantly hot and radiating pain up to my ear. The heavy diamond on her Cartier love ring scratched my skin, leaving a faint red trail. In my past life, tears would have spilled over immediately. I would have whispered an apology for existing. This time, I didn't flinch. I let my head turn with the force of the blow, then slowly, deliberately, turned back to face her. I tasted the faint metallic tang of blood where the inside of my cheek had caught my teeth. I smiled. It wasn't a brave, defiant smile. It was a cold, unnerving stretch of the lips. Is that the best you can do, Madison? I asked, my voice terrifyingly calm. Your form is slipping. Maybe you need to drop a few more pounds to get your speed up. Madison's eyes widened in genuine shock. Her hand hovered in the air for a second before she dropped it to her side. Harper and Bethany exchanged nervous glances. Nobody spoke to Madison Sinclair like that. Are you psychotic, Chloe? Madison hissed, her composure cracking just a fraction. You're lucky I even acknowledge your pathetic, bloated existence. Oh, I feel incredibly lucky, I whispered, stepping forward until I was the one invading her personal space. Enjoy your high horse, Maddie. It's a long way down. I grabbed my gym bag and walked past her, deliberately bumping her shoulder. As I left the locker room, my cheek throbbed, but my mind was crystal clear. The game had begun. Madison's entire identity was wrapped up in her physical perfection. She was currently obsessing over an upcoming casting call for IMG models, a secret she had guarded fiercely, but one I remembered clearly from my previous life. A notorious scout, Amanda Pierce, was scheduled to attend our school's winter gala in December. Madison needed to be flawless. She needed to be undeniably, impossibly thin. And I was going to give her exactly what she wanted. Revenge requires patience, and it requires the perfect bait. I knew Madison's psychology better than she knew herself. If I handed her a poison apple, she would laugh in my face and throw it away. But if I made her believe I was hiding a priceless, exclusive secret to absolute physical perfection, she would tear it from my hands and consume it greedily. Over the next 3 weeks, I initiated the first phase of my plan. The illusion of transformation. I didn't actually lose a massive amount of weight. Healthy weight loss takes time, but I mastered the art of optical illusion. I bought a specialized, high-compression Lululemon shapewear suit that aggressively cinched my waist and smoothed my silhouette. I learned contouring techniques from professional makeup artists on YouTube, using deep shadows to carve out fake cheekbones and sharpen my jawline. I started wearing tailored clothes that emphasized a newly manufactured hourglass figure. To the untrained eye, especially to self-absorbed high schoolers, I was melting away. Whispers started echoing through the hallways of St. Jude's. Did you see Chloe? She looks different. Did she get surgery? I heard she's on some crazy Hollywood diet. I ignored the whispers, playing the role of a girl guarding a precious, life-altering secret. But the real work happened online. I navigated the deep web forums I had frequented in my past life. I didn't order the lethal DNP chemical compound that had cooked my organs. Instead, I sourced the other components of the Hollow Protocol. I ordered the imported ephedra extract, a banned stimulant that violently ramps up the heart rate and suppresses appetite. I acquired a potent, unregulated liquid diuretic from a veterinary supply distributor in Eastern Europe, designed to drain water weight rapidly. And finally, the most insidious ingredient, a rare, highly toxic parasitic cleanse from a questionable holistic apothecary in Southeast Asia. It was marketed as a cellular reset tapeworm, practically microscopic, designed to line the intestinal tract and consume calories before the host body could absorb them. In reality, it ate away at the mucosal lining, causing severe malabsorption, hair loss, and muscle wasting. When the discreet brown packages arrived, I transferred the dangerous liquids into beautiful, minimalist glass vials I bought from an upscale apothecary in Manhattan. I printed custom, embossed labels with a fictitious, elite branding: L'Eclipse, Geneva, the Ouroboros regimen, not for public distribution. Then, I bought a vintage, leather-bound journal. I spent hours filling it with meticulous, frantic handwriting. I documented fake daily logs detailing rapid, effortless weight loss. I wrote about the euphoric lightness, the complete lack of hunger, and how the Geneva vials were melting the fat off my bones while I slept. I made sure to include explicit, heavily underlined warnings. Extremely potent. Only for those who need to drop a dress size in a week. Do not exceed dosage. It was a masterpiece of psychological manipulation. The trap was set for a rainy Tuesday in late October. It was exactly 4 weeks before the IMG Models casting gala. Madison was starting to fray around the edges. I had noticed her furiously pinching the barely there flesh of her waist in the reflection of the cafeteria windows. She was surviving on black iced coffees from Starbucks and celery sticks, her temper shorter than ever. The pressure was eating her alive. During our 5th period chemistry lab, I made my move. I sat at the station directly in front of Madison and Harper. I casually pulled the leather-bound journal from my backpack, making sure the gold-embossed L'Eclipse vials clinked audibly against the wooden desk. I felt Madison's eyes snap to the back of my neck. I opened the journal, pretending to review my notes, deliberately angling the pages so Harper, who was a chronic snooper with a big mouth, could see the bold heading. Week 3, down 12, LBS. Zero hunger. The IMG measurements. I saw Harper aggressively nudge Madison under the table out of the corner of my eye. "Mr. Harrison," I called out, raising my hand. "May I use the restroom?" "Make it quick, Chloe," the chemistry teacher mumbled, writing an equation on the whiteboard. I stood up, leaving my backpack unzipped, the leather journal and the velvet pouch containing the vials resting precariously near the top. I didn't just leave the room. I slipped into the narrow equipment closet directly across the hall, leaving the door cracked a fraction of an inch to watch. Through the sliver of space, I had a clear view of my desk. For 2 agonizing minutes, nothing happened. Then the bell rang, signaling the end of the period. Students began to shuffle out. I held my breath as Madison lingered behind, shooing Harper and Bethany out the door first. I dropped my pen. "Go ahead, I'll catch up," Madison lied smoothly. As soon as the classroom was relatively empty, Madison moved. She didn't hesitate. She didn't look guilty. With the practiced entitlement of someone who believed the world belonged to her, she reached into my unzipped backpack. Her manicured fingers wrapped around the leather journal and the velvet pouch. She slipped them seamlessly into her oversized Louis Vuitton Neverfull tote, hoisted it onto her shoulder, and walked out of the classroom with a triumphant, predatory smirk. In the dark confines of the equipment closet, a slow, genuine smile spread across my face. She took it. She actually took it. I walked back into the classroom a few minutes later, feigning a frantic search. I dumped my backpack onto the floor, my hands trembling with faux panic. "My book!" I gasped, loud enough for Mr. Harrison to hear. "It's gone. Someone stole it." I spent the rest of the day playing the devastated victim. I cried in the guidance counselor's office. I frantically tore through my locker. The more I panicked, the more valuable the stolen goods appeared. That evening, I sat on my bed, staring out the window at the setting sun. I imagined Madison in her sprawling, multi-million-dollar Westchester mansion. I pictured her locking her bedroom door, pulling the leather journal from her designer bag, and reading my fabricated ravings like they were a holy text. I imagined her holding the beautiful, deadly glass vials up to the light, blinded by the promise of perfection. She had stolen her own executioner. The next morning, the transformation began. Madison walked into the locker room, and I instantly noticed the subtle shift. Her pupils were slightly dilated, a hallmark side effect of the ephedra extract. She was buzzing with a nervous, manic energy, talking a mile a minute to Bethany about the upcoming gala. She didn't even look at me. She didn't slap me. She was too consumed by the chemical fire I had just introduced to her system. By Friday, the initial miracle phase took hold. The powerful diuretics had drained every ounce of subcutaneous water from Madison's body. Her cheekbones looked sharp enough to slice open an artery. Her stomach was impossibly flat, almost concave. She looked like a high-fashion editorial come to life, and she knew it. She flaunted it. I found this incredible private clinic regimen. I overheard her bragging loudly in the cafeteria, loudly enough for me to hear. It's strictly European, invite only. I've never felt so energetic in my life. It practically melts the fat at a cellular level. I took a bite of my sandwich, chewing slowly, savoring the taste of roasted turkey and Swiss cheese. I needed the nourishment. I needed my strength. Madison was floating on the euphoric high of the initial weight loss, completely oblivious to the biological warfare she had unleashed inside her own body. She thought she was ascending to godhood. She didn't know that the microscopic parasites were already embedding themselves in the lining of her stomach, or that the ephedra was silently putting a dangerous, crushing strain on her aortic valve. She was glowing. But I knew the truth. It was the bright, brilliant flash of a star, just before it collapses into a black hole. I had given her exactly 2 weeks of heaven, and then the rot would begin. The honeymoon phase of the Ouroboros regimen lasted exactly 18 days. By the 3rd week of November, the facade of high-fashion glamour began to violently fracture, revealing the grotesque reality of what Madison was doing to herself. The human body is an incredible machine designed to survive. When you starve it, it feeds on its own fat reserves. But when you introduce a parasitic entity that actively intercepts the meager nutrients being consumed, while simultaneously pumping the heart with industrial-grade stimulants, the body stops surviving. It begins to cannibalize itself. It started with the tremors. We were in AP English, analyzing The Great Gatsby, when I noticed Madison's hands. She was trying to unscrew the cap of her smart water bottle, but her fingers were shaking so violently she dropped it, sending water spilling across the polished floor. Harper reached over to help, but Madison snapped, her voice carrying a reedy, hysterical edge that hadn't been there a month ago. "Don't touch me! I've got it!" she hissed, her knuckles turning stark white as she gripped the desk edge to steady herself. I watched her from 3 rows back. Beneath the heavy, baked-on layers of Charlotte Tilbury foundation, her skin had taken on a sickly, translucent gray pallor. The ephedra was keeping her awake for days at a time, resulting in deep, bruised-looking hollows under her icy blue eyes. But the most glaring sign of the rot was her hair. Madison's crowning glory, her thick platinum blonde waves, had lost its luster. It looked brittle, like spun glass ready to shatter. The confirmation came during gym class the following Tuesday. I was changing near the mirrors when Madison pulled her silk blouse over her head. A collective, suppressed gasp echoed from Bethany and a few other girls nearby. Madison's spine protruded sharply against her skin, a jagged ladder of bone. Her shoulder blades jutted out like broken wings, and her ribs were so prominent you could count every single one. She had bypassed model thin and crashed directly into clinical emaciation, but it was when she ran a brush through her hair that the true horror struck. With one stroke, a clump of blonde hair the size of a mouse came loose in the bristles. Madison froze, staring at the brush in the mirror. For a split second, genuine, unadulterated terror flashed in her eyes. But the body dysmorphia and the chemical high quickly overrode her survival instincts. She shoved the brush into her locker, slammed it shut, and plastered on a manic, stretched smile. My stylist at the Oscar Blandy salon warned me about shedding with the season change, she lied loudly, though her voice trembled. Nobody bought it. Bethany and Harper exchanged a look of pure, creeping revulsion. The social exile of Madison Sinclair had officially begun. By the 1st week of December, Madison was a walking ghost. She had isolated herself entirely, snapping at anyone who dared look at her too long. She wore bulky cashmere sweaters to hide her skeletal frame, but her face was undeniable. Her cheeks were completely sunken, pulling her lips back over her teeth in a permanent, skull-like grimace. She was dying, exactly the way I had died. The symmetry of it was intoxicating. I knew from my past life that this was the stage where the panic sets in. The user realizes something is catastrophically wrong, but the fear of gaining the weight back prevents them from stopping. Instead, they do the unthinkable. They double the dose, hoping to push through the plateau. I watched her slip into the library one afternoon, her Louis Vuitton tote dragging on her frail shoulder. I followed at a distance and peeked through the stacks. She was huddled in a corner, her hands shaking violently as she pulled the familiar leather journal from her bag. She flipped through the pages I had forged, her eyes darting frantically. Then, she pulled out the glass vial. She didn't measure the drops. She unscrewed the cap, tipped her head back, and swallowed a massive gulp of the liquid diuretic and stimulant cocktail. My heart did a cold, victorious flip in my chest. She had just signed her own death warrant. The winter gala was in exactly 48 hours, and Madison Sinclair was a ticking time bomb. December 10th. The St. Jude's Winter Gala was legendary. A glittering showcase of old money and elite networking, held in the school's transformed grand gymnasium. Crystal chandeliers were hung from the rafters, and a sleek white runway had been installed in the center of the room for the senior charity fashion show. This was the night Amanda Pierce, from IMG Models, was in attendance. She sat at a prime VIP table near the end of the runway, a striking woman with sharp features and a severe black bob, sipping sparkling water and looking notoriously unimpressed. I stood near the back, wearing a simple, elegant, emerald green dress that complemented my natural, healthy curves. I blended into the crowd, nursing a cup of punch, my eyes fixed on the entrance to the backstage curtain. When it was Madison's turn to walk, the upbeat house music shifted to a slower, dramatic bass line. The spotlight hit the curtain. Madison emerged. The entire gymnasium fell into a stunned, horrified silence. She was wearing a custom-made, backless crimson gown that was supposed to cling to her curves. Instead, it hung off her skeletal frame like drapes on a coat rack. Her collarbones looked sharp enough to slice through the silk. Her arms were nothing but skin stretched tight over bone, moving with a jerky, uncoordinated stiffness. But her face was the true nightmare. Despite the heavy stage makeup, the hollows of her cheeks were pitch black. Her eyes were wide, glassy, and completely detached from reality. She walked down the runway, not with the fierce strut of a model, but with the precarious, agonizing shuffle of a corpse animated by sheer willpower. I looked at Amanda Pierce. The scout's pen had stopped moving. Her expression wasn't one of awe or discovery. It was pure, unadulterated disgust. Amanda leaned over to the headmaster, whispering something sharp and urgent, shaking her head vehemently. Madison reached the end of the runway. She struck a pose, throwing her hips to the side. The sudden movement was too much. Her knees buckled inward. She swayed violently, her eyes rolling back in her head. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd as she stumbled, barely catching herself on the edge of the runway stage before awkwardly scrambling backstage. The illusion was shattered. The queen was broken. I set my punch cup down and slipped through the side doors, navigating the dark corridors toward the girls' restrooms near the backstage area. I knew exactly where she would go. I pushed the heavy oak door open. Madison was collapsed against the cold porcelain of the sinks, her crimson dress pooling around her bony legs. She was gasping for air, clutching her chest. The ephedra had pushed her heart to its absolute limit. Her cardiovascular system was entering acute failure. She looked up at me as I locked the bathroom door behind me. The click echoed loudly in the tiled room. "Help! Me!" she choked out, her voice a wet, rattling wheeze. "Call! An ambulance!" I walked over to her slowly, the heels of my shoes clicking a steady, rhythmic countdown on the tiles. I didn't reach for my phone. I simply stood over her, looking down at the frail, pathetic creature she had become. "Do you remember, Madison?" I asked, my voice terrifyingly calm, devoid of any empathy. "Do you remember the morning in the locker room? You asked if I was psychotic. You told me I was lucky you even acknowledged my bloated existence." Madison's glassy eyes widened. She clutched her chest harder, a thin stream of saliva leaking from the corner of her mouth. Her heart rate was so erratic I could see the skin over her ribs fluttering violently. "You wanted perfection," I whispered, crouching down so we were eye to eye. "You wanted the secret to being thin. So, I gave it to you." Confusion, followed by a slow, creeping horror, dawned on her sunken face. "The leather journal. The Geneva vials," I continued, savoring every single syllable. "You didn't steal a miracle, Maddie. You stole a cocktail of veterinary diuretics, illegal stimulants, and tapeworms. I bottled it myself. I wrote every word in that journal. Madison let out a garbled, strangled noise. She tried to lunge at me, a desperate clawing motion with her skeletal hand, but she had absolutely no strength left. She collapsed back against the cabinets, her breathing turning into shallow, rapid pants. "You did exactly what I knew you would do," I said, standing back up, smoothing out my emerald dress. "Your vanity was a noose, and you couldn't wait to put it around your own neck." "I just handed you the rope." "Why?" she croaked, a tear cutting a track through her heavy foundation. "Because in another life you killed me," I said coldly. "Consider this a cosmic balancing of the scales. Enjoy being a size 0, Madison. It's a very lonely place to die." I turned my back on her just as the first massive convulsion hit her frail body. I unlocked the bathroom door, stepping out into the hallway just as a frantic teacher and 2 paramedics burst through the side entrance, having been alerted by the backstage crew. "She's in there!" I cried out, my face twisting into a mask of perfect, innocent terror. "I found her like this. I think she's having a heart attack." I watched as they rushed past me, shouting medical jargon, loading her thrashing skeletal body onto a stretcher. The crimson dress was stained with the fluids her body was now violently rejecting. Madison Sinclair didn't die that night. The paramedics managed to shock her heart back into a stable rhythm in the back of the ambulance. But she didn't win, either. The damage to her aortic valve was permanent. The parasitic infection had destroyed her intestinal lining, necessitating a surgical resection and a permanent feeding tube. She spent the next 6 months in a highly secure psychiatric facility in upstate New York, locked away in a ward where there were no mirrors. I graduated St. Jude's with honors. I went to Boston University, this time avoiding the dark corners of the internet and the desperate pursuit of thinness. I ate well, I laughed often, and I lived the beautiful, vibrant life that had once been stolen from me. Every time I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a victim. I saw a survivor. And somewhere, in a sterile white room, the girl who used to slap me daily was staring at a blank wall, paying the ultimate price for a perfection that never truly existed. If this story of dark karma and ultimate revenge kept you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button right now. Have you ever had to deal with a real-life mean girl who got exactly what she deserved? Tell me your craziest stories in the comments below. Don't forget to share this video and subscribe to the channel for more insane real-life drama.